run through those destinations and help kind of give some guidance about where to dive in Indonesia. And following that spiral, I will start in the Banda Islands and work our way around the kind of top diving destinations within Indonesia. So the Banda Islands are, in my opinion, one of the most exciting places to be visiting in Indonesia. It is really remote diving out there, very underdeveloped. You're going to be getting hammerheads. There's some great underwater seamounts. We get lots of sea snakes, lots of challenging drifts, huge amounts of fish stock. And there's also some really good macro as well. But because it's quite remote, the best way to get to Banda is by liveaboard, and itineraries generally start in Ambon, the Patimura airport, and then we'll head up from Banda all the way over to Raja Ampat. So you're really getting the best of Indonesia with these crossing itineraries. The best time to visit is really sort of between September and May. Over the peak of the start of the year, it's very good. But the reason why April, May, and then September, October are good is that's the time of year the liveaboards are making the crossing from Komodo down in the south up to Raja Ampat. And as part of those journeys, they offer these special itineraries that take you through this incredible area. Diving level wise, it is possible for beginners to go here, but we really, really recommend that you've got your advance, just because you're going to get the full experience, having that extra depth, being a little bit more comfortable in drifts and current dives as well. And because liveaboards are only really going there, it isn't really such a good place for snorkelers and families, just as there isn't really too much else for them to do when they're sort of stuck on a boat all day. So moving on from Banda, we're going to head up towards West Papua. And in West Papua includes obviously the famous Raja Ampat, which is a great year-round destination. But there's Mazul, which is more in the south, which is very famous for the marine park that they've created in that area. And there's also the little-known Triton Bay, which is very special. It's good from October to April. Generally, March, April, January, February, March, April is particularly good, which is why we've sort of joined it on the spiral in this way. But arguably, these are the most biodiverse seas on the planet. You're going to have everything from mantas and sharks to tuna, again, huge fish stocks. You're going to have the most incredible reefs you've ever seen. There's also great macro, while you're not obsessing over the reefs and everything else you're seeing. There's also the famous sort of mangroves, which are you get all the mangrove tree roots coming down into the water, covered in soft coral, a great nursery for juvenile fish as well. So it is, one of the most spectacular places. Thankfully, there's a huge amount of options in terms of experiencing Raja Ampat. You've got a lot of very eco-consciously built resorts. And because they've done that and built them in a very conscious way, they've ensured that they've protected their house reefs. So a lot of them have really beautiful house reefs that you can hop in on from an unlimited diving perspective, or just snorkel on when you're taking a bit of time off from diving. However, if you're a very keen diver, liveaboards, again, are the best way to experience it, because they'll be taking you around all of the best dive sites, whereas resorts sometimes have a little bit more of a limited dive site catchment area. And then the other option is the charter yachts, where you take a small kind of Indonesian Venisi or yacht privately, great for small groups, families, and you can create your own personalized itineraries depending on kind of what you're keen to do. Diving wise, it's a great spot for beginners. A lot of our guests go out there and learn. Very jealous that that's the place that they'll learn to dive, being one of the best places in the world. But again, we'd probably recommend that you do have your advanced or get it when you're out there, just because it will give you a little bit more accessibility into some of the more challenging but exciting dive sites. And it is a fantastic place for snorkelers and families. Beautiful house reefs, lots of activities to do as well in terms of kayaking, going to see birds of paradise and on. So really good for snorkelers and families if you're going on the resorts or the kind of more personalized itineraries of the charter yachts. Excuse me. In terms of reaching there, you're looking to get to an airport called Sorong. You can come in over the north of Indonesia through Manado that I mentioned, or get flights from the likes of Jakarta. So fairly accessible. If we then head over the north of Indonesia, we get to the northern tip of Sulawesi. And the first place we would reach is Lembeh. So Lembeh is regarded as the critter capital of the world, or the muck diving capital of the world. Lembeh is very unique in that it's located in a channel between the mainland of Sulawesi and then Lembeh Island. And through that channel comes a huge amount of nutrients and water flow, and that has sort of led to a really kind of big increase in diversity and quirkiness in the marine life. So here you get to see mimic octopus, coconut octopus, wonderpusses. You'll get flamboyant cuttlefish. You'll get pretty much every species of seahorse you can think of. There'll be lots of nudibranchs. And the diving's really relaxed. You've got, although you will get a bit of current occasionally, generally the reefs here are shallow sloping reefs with lots of coral bommies. And you've got a whole load of expert dive guides that are really good at spotting these particularly rare critters that are always very well camouflaged and hidden. So very gentle dives, just marveling at the wonder of what the ocean can create in terms of bizarre animals. And then you'll always kind of finish the dives fairly shallow in seagrass beds or just amongst coral bommies, doing a very prolonged safety stop. And ultimately, a lot of your dives here will be limited by you hitting 50 bar on your tank, rather than it being very time sensitive, like sort of finishing on 45 minutes or finishing on the hour that a lot of places do. So really good for photographers as well. I would say it's definitely a year-round destination as well. But what we've learned, or the community of divers have learned, is that these critters often come up more from the depths when there's more cold water and more upwelling coming up from the depths as well. And they sort of come up shallower into more accessible diving depths. So although it is year-round, we'd probably suggest the summer towards October, November is a good time to be visiting to get the best of it. As I mentioned, yeah, diving level, good for beginners, really good for photographers who are passionate about taking cool shots. Snorkelers family-wise, not really that exciting, just because it's quite hard to appreciate small little things while you're floating on the surface, sort of 5 or 10 meters above them. But there is a lot of fun land tours on Sulawesi itself. There's some great national parks there. You get to see the endemic black-crested macaques. You've got tarsiers there as well. So there's some good little land adventures to add on. In terms of reaching Lembeh, you can come into Manado, which you can get to directly from Singapore, which is the little trick I was telling you at the beginning. On the northern side of this peninsula of Sulawesi, you have the really exciting Bunaken Marine Park. And in completely different to all the critters of Lembeh, Bunaken is actually just an incredible area with beautiful, vibrant and rich reefs, huge amounts of fish stock, great for turtles, and it is good for macro as well, but generally you're just admiring the beauty of the reefs and the underwater environment around you. So Bunaken and Lembeh are really lovely complementary dive destinations that you can do very easily together in a trip, one going from the beautiful reefs and then also doing the cool critters at Lembeh. It is also a year-round destination, but we like to think maybe May to July and September, October are the best times to visit. In terms of options here, Resorts is the way to go. There are some absolutely stunning resorts located right in the heart of the marine park, giving you great access to all the dive sites. We've also got a whole load of really lovely kind of eco-conscious, more boutique lodges that are a great option for those that are traveling on a little bit more of a budget. But a very, very special place, very easily accessible because you also just fly into Manado. As a destination, it's probably one of our most booked in Indonesia. It's very accessible for beginners. It is also fantastic for families because the reefs there are beautiful for snorkelers as well. So a really, really lovely destination. So we're then heading round the spiral a little bit more. We're now heading a bit more west and touching the eastern side of Borneo. And there's a destination there that is little known called Maratua Atoll. Now, Maratua Atoll is located, a couple of 100 miles south of Sipadan, which is in the Malaysian waters on the eastern side of Borneo. And Sipadan is obviously a world-renowned diving destination. And Maratua is actually considered to be Indonesia's Sipadan. And a lot of the dive sites in Maratua are also named the same as those famous dive sites in Sipadan. And that's ultimately because you're going to get very, very similar diving experiences, perhaps even arguably better. So in terms of what you can get at Maratua Atoll, there are dive sites like Barracuda Point, which will have all of the reef sharks, schools of barracuda, turtles everywhere. You'll also have Manta Alley, which is great for manta rays that come in and clean to the cleaning stations on the bommies there. You get thresher sharks, you get leopard sharks. You'll also be able to go visit the very unique jellyfish lake, which is a lake full of stingless jellyfish that's very interesting to go snorkeling. And there's also some pretty good macro there as well. So it really does offer everything, probably one of the most all-round dive destinations in Indonesia. In terms of best time to visit, can argue it's year-round. I definitely would say between March and October is best. Maybe avoid January. A lot of the resorts close in January just because of the weather conditions, and they will just be doing some annual kind of repairs and updates or renovations. So March to October is arguably the best time. Liveaboards really don't visit this part of Indonesia very often, so resorts is the way forward. Again, there's some really good options between the more affordable as well as a couple of very nice, more luxurious ones too. I'd say it is suitable for any diving level, but if you want to enjoy the big experiential sites, again, being advanced is highly recommended. It's a lovely place for snorkelers and families too. Getting there, however, is the challenge. Your ultimate goal airport is Barau, but the only way to get Barau is to go from Balikpapan, and Balikpapan you would get to from the likes of Jakarta. So you're looking at kind of 2 domestic flights to get through to Barau. There'll be a little short car transfer and then a sort of 2.5 hour, 3 hour boat transfer out to the atoll. So it is a little bit of a challenge, but it is really worth it. I was very fortunate to go there all the way back in 2004 when we were doing a shoot with the BBC. And I remember being sat on the beach on the last day of the shoot. There was a couple of shots they needed to get. So the team went off to get those. I wasn't needed on that dive. And as they all jumped on the boats, one of the island rangers came over saying a turtle nest was hatching. So I got to go sit with a turtle nest on my own for 2 hours, watching all these baby hawksbill turtles dig their way out and head off on their own adventures, whizzing down the beach and off into the sea. So yeah, some really magical experiences to be had in Maratua Atoll, and can highly recommend it. Even though the travel is a bit complex, what we can also do at ZuBlu is help organize land adventures. And one thing to note in this particular area is at Balikpapan, there's a really lovely orangutan sanctuary and a sun bear sanctuary. And they also offer some really lovely river cruises and jungle tours to go see proboscis monkeys and all the various incredible kind of land wildlife that Borneo offers. So it's actually quite nice to break up your trip to Maratua Atoll with a few days at Balikpapan to get that land adventure as well. And that just softens the challenge of reaching it as a destination with all of those domestic flights. So as we head down the eastern coast of Borneo, we'll then pretty much land straight into Bali. Bali is obviously a very famous destination. We'll definitely be doing a webinar specifically on Bali and all the variety that it offers, but it does have a lot to give. So if we start sort of in the north of Bali, you've got the very lovely reefs up in the Menjangan Marine Park in the northwest. As you head along the top, you get towards Tulamben, where there's the famous Liberty Wreck. A bit further round, you get to Ahmed, which is great for macro diving. Coming down the east side of Bali, you go through kind of Chandidasa, Panang Bai, great learning grounds for new divers, as well as some lovely reefs. But if we head off the east coast of Bali to the nearby islands of Nusa Lombok and Nusa Penida, that's where you get the manta rays that are there year round and pretty much guaranteed. Although some of our partners will probably won't enjoy me saying that. You also get the mola mola there, the sunfish. They're a bit more towards the end of the year at their peak, I guess I'd say September, October. And there's lovely reefs around all of those islands as well, and some lovely drift diving across those reefs. So a huge amount of option there. Accommodation-wise, it's Bali. It's very well developed. So you've got everything from local guest houses all the way up to luxury resorts and beachfront villas and all sorts. So whatever you fancy, there will be something on offer for you. Diving-wise, suitable for everyone. Great for snorkelers and families, and very easily accessible straight into Denpasar Airport. So if we then head along from Bali east, we're then entering Nusa Tenggara, and we quite quickly reach Komodo, which is the other really famous dive destination, standing alongside Raja Ampat, probably within Indonesia. Komodo, again, a year-round destination, but given the spiral that I'm trying to instill, probably say it's a little bit better coming towards the end of the year, maybe. That makes the south side of Komodo a little bit more accessible when the waves are a bit calmer. But actually, at the moment, we would say we're coming into good season now at Komodo. A lot of the liveaboards are there at the moment. Diving-wise, it's a very, very exciting destination. You get a lot of pelagic marine life. The currents are ripping. You get a lot of manta rays, sharks, so on. Beautiful corals, lots of action, lots of fish stock. So very, very exciting. You also can go see the Komodo dragons on the islands there as well, which is very unique. So with all of that current and action, it is okay for beginners, but again, we'd be saying advanced is better, just so you can experience it to the full. And then accommodation-wise, lots of options. All the resorts are pretty much located on the eastern side of the park. There are no resorts allowed in Komodo itself. There's one resort on the west side, Kalimaya, which is a very special place. But the majority of the resorts are on the east side. So they will do diving sort of day trips from their resort into the park. However, if you're a very keen diver, I'd definitely be recommending liveaboards, just because that will get you deeper into the park to the best dive sites, save a lot of travel time each day, not traveling back and forth from resorts, and give you the full Komodo experience. Charter yachts are also a great option, especially if you're a group of friends, just popping over for a long weekend from the likes of Singapore or Australia. Excuse me. You can, get a small 2 to 6 cabin private yacht, and we can help create a personalized itinerary depending on what you fancy. Again, yeah, very good for snorkelers and families, especially if you're staying on resorts or doing the charter options. To get to Komodo, you're flying into Labuan Bajo, which is very easily accessible from the likes of Bali or Jakarta. And then the final destination that I wanted to highlight is Alor, which is kind of all the way to the east end of Nusa Tenggara, all the way along the bottom of the shell, so to speak. Similar to Maratua, maybe a little known destination, but very exciting once you're there. Really good currents, lots of sharks, especially famous for the hammerheads. There's also some very, very unique macro over there as well. Here, we'd say it's better towards the end of the year, especially October, November time, because of the weathers and the monsoon. A lot of the resorts here, not that there are many, close December to March. And yeah, there aren't many options over here. It is a fairly remote location. So resorts is really the only way to go. There are some liveaboards that do put itineraries through there. But resorts is probably the best way, just as they'll know the area better and the dive guides will be more proficient at giving you the best experiences. Because of the currents, it's definitely advanced and up in my opinion. And also because of the currents and maybe the remoteness and the fact that it's not very well developed as a tourist destination, there's not really much sort of else on offer apart from diving. So probably not such a good place for snorkelers and families. Getting there is a bit fiddly. You're looking ultimately to get to Mali Airport, which is on Alor. I think there's another airport in Indonesia called Alor, which helps make things confusing. But yeah, ZuBlu's here to help out with any of that travel logistics. Great, so that's hopefully a useful little tour from around Indonesia and helped give a little bit of insight into trying to choose the right time of year to go to certain places. As mentioned, a lot of the places are year round, but keen to kind of suggest the peak time so you do get the best underwater experience as possible.